The media is full of stories on what we like to call boat people, asylum seekers and refugees coming to our shores in the hope of a better life. These people are usually trying to escape a bad situation in their home country and seek refuge in our country. There have been many media stories and reports lately relating to this issue, especially covering the Australian government's new refugee scheme, which involves our government sending 800 asylum seekers who have sought refuge on our shores to Malaysia and accepting 4,000 people from Malaysia. The media dominates our opinion of these people, who many of us see as different. So what makes a refugee? Well, as the name suggests, asylum seekers and refugees are people seeking asylum and refuge in a safe country like ours. They have usually come from a country torn apart by war and conflict, or a place where they fear for their lives. The United Nations defines a refugee as a person who, owing to a well-founded fear of being persecuted for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion, is outside of the country of his nationality and is unable to, or owing to such fear, is unwilling to, avail himself of the protection of that country. These people live in fear of their lives and find their only option is to attempt to enter our country for their safety. For those of us who identify as Australian, we see ourselves as lucky enough to live in a very privileged country and find we do not face the challenges of being persecuted for our race, religion or nationality to the extent of which these asylum seekers do, and therefore the notion of having to seek refuge in another country is a difficult concept for us to grasp. The zone of difference between ourselves and the refugees is a big one. These people are coming from countries very different from our own, having lived their lives very differently to how we have lived ours. Therefore, it is only natural that we would see refugees and asylum seekers as outsiders. It is also hard to think of these people in a positive light when our country does things such as putting them in detention centres, detention being something most children associate with negative actions. With the media playing a big role in our view of the refugees, our opinions are dominated by the stories and reports being pushed at us from every angle. A good portion of these articles help along the negative image of refugees. Headlines such as "Refugee exchange costs to hit 300 million" and "Refugees blunder costing us billions" play to our greedy side and either consciously or subconsciously influence us to consider refugees and asylum seekers as detrimental to our community. Australia prides itself on being a multicultural society, so perhaps it's because we see ourselves as a dominant culture that we portray these refugees in a negative light. It is only by exploring this subject further that we can understand the differences and similarities between ourselves and these refugees. So how can education mediate the difference and dominance issues presented in this topic? Classroom activities should aim to allow children to make informed decisions about refugees. The children need to understand that not everyone lives as we do. As most people would see refugees as others, different from ourselves, they would find them difficult to understand and relate to. But the lesson that different doesn't equal bad needs to be brought to light. The children will gain a sense of empathy from looking into the way these people lived and why they felt they had to leave. Following are some classroom lessons that can be used to facilitate these learning outcomes. Lesson idea: the two donkeys. Children are divided into small groups, given pictures and asked to arrange them in a sequence to make a story. The completed picture sequence should look like this. After groups have completed their pictures, discussion could ensue on how cooperation works as an alternative to conflict, and working together works on a personal and global scale. The idea of global citizenship comes into play here, with children learning that we are all citizens of Earth, not just citizens of our respective countries. Looking at it from a bigger perspective, it's easier to close the gap of difference. Lesson idea: immigration. Define the word immigration. Prepare with a class story involving a typical scenario of why a person would immigrate or take refuge in a country like ours. Discuss with the students how they feel and what emotions they believe others would feel in a similar situation. Ask the class if anyone's parents or grandparents immigrated to Australia and the reasons for doing so. Lesson idea: stereotypes. This lesson is all about challenging negative stereotypes. Provide the class with pictures and stories about refugees. Discuss the features that are portrayed in the pictures and stories. What is negative about them? Do the negative features continue throughout all the articles and pictures? Discuss with the class why stereotypes and bias can have a damaging effect on various groups. Ask children if they have ever experienced bias themselves. Lesson idea: refugee child. Have the students read or read to them a story about a refugee child's life, their immediate environment, style of living, and hopes for the future. Children can reenact the child's story in the classroom. Ask students to compare their lives to that of the refugee child, discussing the similarities and differences. Lesson idea: critical review. Students should critically question popular opinions about refugees and asylum seekers. Students could look at newspaper headings and evaluate the types of words used to describe the refugee situation. Based on the knowledge they have already learned, determine whether the headings are negative or positive, and whether the children think they have accurately portrayed the refugee situation. Ask the children to write their own newspaper article on refugees or boat people. Compare these articles with those found in newspapers. The outcomes expected from evaluating this event are that children come to realise that different doesn't equal bad. Children should be able to understand their own identity and where they fit in society. They should have an understanding of the benefits and challenges of living in a diverse society such as our own. Students should also be able to understand how the media dominate our opinions of events and situations, and that by critically evaluating these situations, they will be able to make their own informed decisions.